Hi everyone, I'm Pari. Welcome to Living Your Best Life with Eddie Stone, founder and CEO of Touchstone Essentials. Hello, Eddie.
Hi, Pari. So nice to be with you this evening.
Nice to be with you too. Any good news?
Well, it's almost spring. That's about the best thing I can say here in the States and where I live in North Carolina. We've slowly seen our temperatures begin to rise, but with respect to the overall environment with the coronavirus, which is our subject tonight, I fear, at least in the U.S., sort of the worst is in front of us. We probably have a really challenging few weeks, and I particularly worry about people that are older, and particularly if they happen to have compromised immune systems, if they were anybody that's sort of a lifetime smoker, people in that category. I'm concerned. I've told both my parents to stay as close to home as possible. I've got some tips I want us to talk about, but I'm worried for people.
Yeah, with the situation right now all over the world, I think we should talk about this. It's very interesting. Here in my country, the situation is calmer now because it's been for a while, here, the news, people were in panic, and now I think it's getting better, but still many people are worried about this. How about your situation?
Well, and by the way, I agree with that. I actually have felt good about reading that the numbers appear to be declining in China. I think I read they haven't reported, and there's always the question, right, of what's being reported, if it's accurate or not, but I think they haven't reported any significant new cases in the past couple of days. And so that's great to see that there is a chance to get ahead of things. But at the same time, I was looking at some of the figures coming out of Iran, other parts of the Middle East, Korea, although that seems to now be leveling off, but then Italy.
Yeah.
Well, that really seems worrisome for the Italians. And so that's really quite difficult. In the U.S., we had a delay. I guess there was some missteps or whatever the challenge was with getting the test kits out. And so we're behind on really understanding everybody that has it. And so most experts believe there's a lot more people that have it or they're contagious, whatever the proper term would be, than we know about. And so I think that's worrisome that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to learn about rates of infection, and what will likely happen is, instead of infections coming from someone that visited another location that has it, you get into what's referred to as community infections or contagions. And so that's, it's
you can share with us like how to prevent or to protect ourselves from this virus.
I am. I've got some ideas, and I know people have a lot of opinions about how the virus came about, and they have opinions about is 5G or technology making it worse, and so I don't know, but we can set that aside because there are some really proven things people can do to reduce their risk, right? And most important is to just reduce your risk, right? Because I think from most of the numbers that we've seen, there's 100,000+ people and approaching 5,000 people that have died. So that's a really high rate of death. And particularly if you then said, well, what part of the population is dying? It's the older people. So we've really never seen anything in sort of modern times that had sort of this enormous death rate with it. So I have some things that I've been trying to communicate. And in fact, if some of your listeners happen to be on our email list, I've sent out a couple of emails about this. But here's the very first thing, and it seems so simple that I think people sometimes don't realize how important it is, but wash your hands.
Correct.
There's no question that hygiene is one of the best ways to fight the infection, because it's most likely that if you and I were live in the same room together, unless we were closer than a meter, right? So if we were at least 1 meter apart, the chances of me infecting you or you infecting me from either water droplets from sneezing or coughing are very low, because coronaviruses, which have been around a long time, we understand some about them. This is a unique or novel, they call it new, but water droplets can be contagious, but they quickly lose their potency. And in fact, even if you sneezed on a countertop, you ought to clean it off, but even if it's set there for a couple of hours, by the end of a couple of hours, it's probably not going to be contagious for someone. So really what happens is it's sort of hand-to-hand contagion. So if you and I shake hands, or we hug, or somehow we come in contact, and then one of us touches our eye or a nose or a mouth, that's most likely, where we're going to have a problem. And so hygiene, people sort of ignore the hygiene. And I notice so many people think it's the mask. The mask may be beneficial for someone that's contagious, right? To keep them from sneezing or coughing out into the public. But in terms of you and I individually, if we wear the mask, there's very little likelihood that's going to help us. But most important on the list is washing your hands. And in this case, washing your hands for 10 or 15 seconds, right? It's not just a little rinse under the water. And so I've really been trying to encourage people to really pay attention to this. And then there are some things that are a little less obvious, but they're all about how they positively impact your immune system. So let's take, for example, sleep. Most people in a modern world, it's so demanding, and they've got their phone sitting by their bed, and they check their email before they go to bed. They check their email. Most people just don't sleep enough, or they don't sleep very well. I don't know if you've ever been around someone, or maybe you have one of these Apple watches or the Samsung watches that tell you about your quality sleep. And most people, when they see the numbers, like they're sleeping solid 45 minutes a night or something, it's really sort of like startling and a wake-up call. But your immune system repairs itself and sort of regathers its energy and its effectiveness through sleep. And so sleep is just really one of these critical elements to make sure on a daily basis you've not just sort of rejuvenated yourself from an energetic standpoint, that your body is rejuvenating in the immune system. And so if we say washing the hands is priority one, we might be able to say that number 2 or 3, depending on how you will look at it, is really getting enough rest. And so I tell people to pay attention. So if you're someone that likes to stay up late at night and you have to get up early, or you're a partier, or whatever the term might be, this is one of those periods of times where leading a somewhat quiet, restful life would be important. And then number 3, and this is probably more important than sleep, but it's doesn't too much overshadow it, is proximity, or just staying away from sick people. And, I probably someone hears this and says, okay, well, that's kind of obvious, but it's about the unobvious places that's true. And so standing in line in a restaurant, right? Trying to keep a distance. Here in the US today, there's a lot of people that are voting. I think there's 6 or 7 states that are voting in the primaries for the presidential presidential elections that are coming up in November, plus other state elections. In my state, we just had what was called Super Tuesday a week or so ago, and people go to these lines and they're standing close to each other, right? Or go to a sporting event. And so this is one of those cases, particularly if a person feels like they're in the vulnerable category, they just need to avoid being around a lot of people. If you're over 60 years of age, you should deeply consider whether you should fly on an airplane or get on a bus or do these things. A few weeks of quiet time is really critical, but for all of us, avoiding sick people is important. And so let's, giving it this an order, we'll say washing hands, getting sleep, avoiding sick people. And then number 4, a little bit fits into the category with the sleep, but it's really critical, is managing stress. Mm-hmm. And so even though we're talking about the virus, we need to make sure we're not too stressed or too worried about it. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote a letter and sent it out to our customers and members, because I want people to be knowledgeable and not terrified or worried sick, because the more you worry, the more stressed you are about this situation, the more likely you are to be sick, because that really depresses your immune system. And Pari, I'll bet you've had times in your life where you had a lot of stress and you were kind of sick, right? It just kind of goes with it, right? Or you're not getting enough sleep. And so washing your hands, getting enough sleep, avoiding sick people, managing your stress is critical. And then now we think about those things that I hope for our listeners, because they listen to our show and our discussions of ultra-processed food. You want to do two things here. Number 5. One, if you've ever taken a break from all the fast food, all the ultra-processed food, all the high-fat, high-sodium, high-sugar foods that don't have a lot of nutrients, now is the time to take a break, right? You don't want all your meals to come from fast food restaurants, from snack bags. This is that time where you really want to try to eat fruits and vegetables. And even if you're not a big fan of them, figure out how to prepare them in such a way that you consume them, because micronutrients are sort of the backbone of your system and function from an immune standpoint. So here's something to think about. Every cell in your body has mitochondria. And I don't know if mitochondria is a term that you're used to, but or familiar with, but mitochondria, you might also think about it as being like a respirator or almost like your lungs, in that when your lungs take in oxygen, it processes that oxygen into a usable form inside your body. The mitochondria is sort of the respiratory system in the cell structure, because it processes micronutrients and turns them into energy. Mm-hmm. It's what really provides this sort of fuel for the system of your body. If you're not putting those micronutrients in there, then you're literally starving that aspect of your body, your immune system. And so your ability, even if you've washed your hands or stayed away or managed your stress, if you don't have those nutrients in there, your immune system will function poorly. That's why people that you see have a terrible diet tend to be sickly all the time, because they're just not feeding that mitochondria. So micronutrients, eating fruits and vegetables. And so I'll tell you right up front, if you don't like them, then buy our super green juice, put it with cold water, put it with almond milk or whatever, just drink it down fast, right? If you don't want to enjoy the flavor, no problem, but find some source. If it's not going to be ours, which is 44 different fruits and vegetables, find something that gives you a large variety of properly grown fruits and vegetables, because that's what your body is desperate for in situations like this. And then number 6 is really thinking about your exposures to environmental pollutants and toxins, because we know that things like heavy metals, volatile organics are depressive on your immune function. And it's actually worse than that, because it's not just they get in the way of your immune function, they can damage DNA and cause other issues. So the example I give people is to think about, you've heard of antioxidants, right? Yeah. Antioxidants come from fruits and vegetables. So again, we're talking about micronutrients. Antioxidants help, it's called ion exchange. They give up an electron to a rogue free radical in your body that can damage DNA. And so it's one of the ways that your body creates problem solving through the chemistry of food. Well, detoxifying your body, staying away from these things, it's really the same situation, because as free radicals damage the body and hurt the immune function, so do heavy metals and environmental pollutants. Now, for anybody that's listened to our show, I would tell you right up front, the most important thing you do is to find a good quality zeolite. I think we sell one, but it doesn't matter if it's not ours. You gotta find one, because there's very, very few things that perform like that natural mineral to bind with heavy metals and toxins and carry them out of your body, not leaving them sort of free to roam around and create damage. And so it's crucial in this regard, and you want to think about this. And so if there are ways to avoid exposure, do that, but you need to be on a routine. Greens are a good way to support your body's ability to detox. Water, lots and lots of water, is a good way to support your body's ability to detox, as well as zeolites are a good way to support your body to detox. And then the final thing I would say is that from a general standpoint, from a general standpoint, is to think about those things. And in this way, we're all sort of unique, right? So what are the things in your life that you've noticed that when you do them, you feel run down? You know, we sort of all have these things, right? Do you find sometimes you over-exercise and boy, you got a few days where you're really run down. You work too many hours in a couple day period of time. You're not sleeping right, so you're run down. you know, whatever that is for you, this is that moment to consider self-care and manage self as sort of the final tip here, maybe number 7, I'll call it, that I would say is to just be conscious. And maybe we could say, well, that's just all encompassing of the advice we're giving. Okay, fair enough. Because this is all about having as well a performing and a strong immune system as you can. And we'd love to say do this all the time, but particularly when we're facing what I believe we can call a global pandemic, right? So no matter where you are or who you are, being conscious of these things gives you some control over something that it has so many unknowns. I think that's part of what's frightening, is people are just unsure. And in the states where we live, we haven't had a lot of people that get the testing. So, you know, you might walk around doing business and see somebody and go, wow, I wonder if they've got it, or maybe I've got it, right? So there's all these worries. And so the thing I try to focus on in moments like this is, okay, what can I do and what can I control? And so those are the things that I've been trying to talk to people with the platforms I've given. I've got a blog post up on the website. We've sent it out in email, and anybody that tunes into anything I'm doing for the next few weeks, I'm going to keep harping on these points, because I want people to really pay attention to what they can control, and try not to worry as much about the things they can't control.
Yes, thank you very much, Eddie. I think all kind of sickness, you know, we have to take care of our immune system, right?
Yeah.
That's how to protect ourselves. And you know what? I drink green juice every day. And then you have another one, Super Green Plus, right? That can help support immune system very well too. I take both, you know, every day.
And that one is that the two have sort of two separate actions, but both combined are quite powerful. The Super Greens Plus D is the one you're talking about in the capsule form, with the 2,000 IUs of vitamin D that comes from a mushroom. So you get all the other things that you find in a mushroom, like macrophage, other things that help to build the NK killer cells, strength in your body and your immune system. And for people that, for example, that just can't drink greens, and there are people like that. I have some very sincere people that come up to me and say, Eddie, I can't drink the greens, even though I think the greens taste great. It tastes like raspberry and apple. Okay, take the capsules, right? Yeah. Fair enough. If you can't do it, take the Super Greens Plus D. But whatever you do, try to support your immune system during a time like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because here in Thailand, we go through this situation with the coronavirus very well. You know, before, I mean, from last week, everywhere I went in Bangkok, I had to wear a mask, you know, and everywhere in the place where I go, they provide these hand gels, you know, to clean the hands, you know.
Yeah, I do worry about some of those hand gels because of some of the chemicals, but I guess right now we'll kind of set that worry aside and just focused on killing the germs. I saw something online. The one thing I would tell everybody is use your common sense. If you see something on social media that doesn't make sense, don't listen to it, or go to a valid website to learn about it. I saw something suggesting that people gargle with bleach. That's an unbelievably horrible idea and can actually cause death if you were actually to have too much bleach, and too much means just a little bit. So just use common sense and don't believe everything you see on social media and the internet, because there's a lot of it that's not true.
Eddie, that is a very good point. You're talking about hand gel, you know, like you said, that's maybe chemical too, because now we don't know what is what, you know, everywhere we go, they provide, so we use them.
Yeah, and people, look, they're frightened, and so they'll just use anything that's put in front of them. But you got to really be careful. I mean, there are some hand gels out there that are primarily bleach with a little aloe vera. That's not good for your body, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, a good hand gel would have alcohol in it, 60% alcohol, because that what we know about killing germs. But so just be wise. I trust our audience is smart, and they just need to use good judgment. And if something sounds a little off kilter, do some homework, because it might not make sense.
Wow. So we have to be smart all the time once we walk out home.
We do. I think it's okay to ask everybody to be as smart as they can. That's all right. I believe in people, and I believe that they're capable of making good decisions. So
yeah, I believe that our audience can go through this situation very well, you know. Everyone,
they'll be better prepared than most people, for sure.
Okay, thank you so much for today, Eddie. So we see you again next time. Okay.
Soon, Pari. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.